everyone, welcome to another episode of Woolen Spinning. This is Tuesday, February 3rd, 2027, and I am coming to you from just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia here in Canada. It is so good to be with you guys. Thank you for being here, and thank you for taking some time out of your day to participate, to be here in the live chat for those who are patrons of the community and are part of our Patreon community. And thank you if you're watching this later and you're getting caught up. It means a lot that you spend time here with us and that you take some time out of your day to spend it here. I know there's a lot of things out there that compete for our attention, and I just feel really pleased that you guys are here and want to be here. What did I say, Christine? Did I not say March 3rd? Did I say something else? I probably said something else. It's kind of been one of those years. I was going to say days, and I was like, no, it's more than a day, more than a week. It's been a year. Welcome to Tessa and Linda, Christine, Glenda, Eliane is here, Pauline, Ellen, Amanda, Sarah is here. It's so good to see you guys. Thank you. See you guys. Did I say February? I am so sorry. It's March. We switched over to March on Sunday, didn't we? I cannot believe it is already March. That is hilarious. Thanks, Christine, for catching that. Yeah, it has been... it's been a crazy couple weeks. We just had the podcast last week because me and Rebecca had switched the wool circle with the live stream for 1 week because I had been sick. She was traveling. It worked out really super well. Welcome to Emma, first time joining. Hello from Ontario. So we're kind of ended up streaming 2 weeks in a row, which is highly unusual, and it's kind of fun to kind of pick up where we left off last week and continue on with the conversation. As I was getting things ready for today, I sort of realized that we would probably more likely than not run out of time because welcome to Woolen Spinning. So I wanted to share with you really quickly this little image here is something that's on my looms right now because we're probably not going to get a chance to talk about it today. There's too many other things to talk about, namely the sweater behind me. But this is what's on my loom right now. It is 216 cotton from Maurice Broussard in Quebec, and I am weaving the, what are they called? The floral bouquet napkins. They were out of hand woven from summer of 2024. Was it 2024 or 2025? It's not an old pattern, quote unquote. Anyways, they were in hand woven. I'm pretty sure they were summer 2025. They're quite recent. Anyways, I saw them and I just loved them and I wanted to get them on the loom. So this is a photo of them in progress. I did substitute yarn for this. I didn't have access to what was called for in the pattern. And so far, things are working out really quite well. So as I work my way through a couple more of those and get a little bit further along with the project, I will share with you guys on the podcast how it's going and the inspiration behind the colors that I chose, all that kind of stuff. So that is the image there that you see. Before we sort of jump into the show and get going, if you're newer here or you're feeling a little bit unsure about how everything fits together in the Woolen Spinning community, there are some links down below this video that will help you. And the Start Here guide is the one that you want to focus on in particular. It's how the community works, where people usually begin. And then of course also there's Ketchup and Pickles, which is like our monthly newsletter. And that has everything that's been released for the month, everything that's coming up. And if you're already familiar with both of those things, you don't need to do anything. We'll just jump right into the show. So I wanted to chat today about these larger projects that we sometimes get a bit bogged down by. And I wanted to sort of spend some time talking about sort of what happens in that shift from when a large project goes from feeling nourishing to feeling a bit more heavy. And we'll spend some time talking about that because every single one of my projects right now is in that precarious situation. So we'll get into that. The other thing that I wanted to mention, just going back a step to housekeeping, is Woolen Spinning Radio has been released for the month. We had Crystal Hesser back on the show to talk about textured yarns and designing them. It was a really fun conversation, and you can find that anywhere that you download and find your audio podcast. So Spotify, iTunes, all the rest of it. And that is it. Everything else is in Ketchup and Pickles for the month. So enjoy all the things. All right, let's jump into the intro, and then we will come back with, I think we'll start off with a little bit of spindling that I've been working on, and then we'll kind of get into some of the meat of the show, if you will. So I'll see you guys on the other side. All right, so, where are we? Here we go. So, yeah, so let's talk about, let's start off with a couple of projects that I actually have been sampling and sort of finishing before we get into sort of the bulk of the show, which is talking about some of these larger projects that I've been working on. So the first thing that I wanted to share with you was actually some spindling. It's actually a skein of actually skeined finished yarn, and I also started a little bit of a spindling project that is some sampling for a bigger project. I had introduced it last week. I had done like the prep, the fiber prep piece of it, and I actually was able to start the sampling process. So let's talk about finished yarn first, and then we'll talk about sampling, the spindle sampling. Both of these are pretty quick, pretty small, but fun to sort of take a moment and celebrate something finished first. So this is actually a finished project. This was something that I talked about last week on the show, and it is the Sommalier Guts Club from October of 2024. So getting to be a little bit older, and I think we had talked about last time on the show sort of those projects that it end up stashed for a long time, and you sort of end up feeling like, or I've started to sort of feel like some of them are weighing me down a little bit. The fibers maybe been prepped and it's sort of partially spun, or the yarn's been, balled up for a while and it's partially knit, etc., etc. So this was kind of one of those projects. Melissa had asked me if I would do, if I would spin it for her, because she was getting a little bit behind with the sample spinning and whatnot. And for her, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think what often happens when they're working through like all of the picking and the carding and whatnot for the different clubs and the different preps that they do, by the time she gets to the point where she's ready to start spinning, if it's like a sample, she knows the fiber inside and out, because they've washed it, they've picked it, they've carded it, they've prepared it, they've blended it with something. She really has gotten into the weeds with it. So then by the time the spinning comes around, she sort of already knows what to expect. And I think so often she's sort of happy to move on to the next thing, because what she really loves is the prep phase. Like that's like her, the chef's kiss part of it for her. So I had spun the sample skein that she for this. There's something in here that's like aggravating me. That's I can feel it in the back of my throat. And then I had the leftover, the last 70 grams ready to spin, and it was all prepped and ready to go, and I just never got to it. So this was 60 grams, so 60% CVM from Sonia Gregg here in Colombia, and then 40 grams of Duels, that's the name of the sheep, which was a Gulf Coast native, so 60/40, and then another 15 grams of Bombyx silk. So it wasn't quite 60/40, it was sort of less than that, plus the 15 grams of the Bombyx silk. And the Gulf Coast native was from Oregon, from Roy Bob's farm. Anyways, I spindle spun all of this on my supported spindles. I talked about it quite a lot last episode. And Mike held my spindles because my setup right now, living at my mom's, is a little bit odd. Everything is kind of a bit, you know, fly by the seat of your pants a little bit. And so he helped me wind off all of the supported spindles. And I think I shared that with you guys last time. I'm actually not sure if I have any photos. Oh yes, I do. Wonderful. So these were all of the spindles loaded, and I told you guys last time the bottom two were Bumpa the Builder, B-U-M-P-A, a local spindle maker, my friend Megan's dad. And then the one from the second from the top that has the open whirl, that hollow whirl, that's Maudsley Fiber Arts, and that's Helen. She's located in Canmore, Alberta. Or did they move? Are they in Houston now? No, I think they're in Canmore still. Anyways, doesn't matter. And then the top is Mirkwood, is one of the Mirkwood spindles. And I was just really enjoying reconnecting with my spindles and reconnecting with you know, spinning on them. So after I wound them all off, I had 2 weaving bobbins full of yarn. I hooked up one of my wheels, and honestly, I just sat and plied one afternoon. I was really needing a slow down, really quiet afternoon, and I pulled out my 2 bobbins full of, my weaving bobbins full of yarn, and Bob's your uncle. This turned out really nicely. I really like the twist angle. I like that there's sort of some inconsistencies in it. It reminds me how much I love spindle spun yarn. I love that it's not absolutely perfect from start to finish. It's got those nuances in it that we love about spindle spun yarn. I hadn't spun on my spindles for a while, so I felt a bit rusty, and I just really like how this came out. It's got good bulk. It pops, you know, when you squish it, it comes right back. It's airy, it's really light. I'm just really happy with it. So that is finished, and it can go into the pile of finished yarn. And I'll probably pull it out and use it for something like, you know, a main color of a toque or something at some point. It'll come up again. Hello, Sam. Hi, Rebecca. Rebecca said they're in the midst of a blizzard. I know, Rebecca, you can correct me, Rebecca, if I'm wrong and I'm putting words in your mouth, but I know Rebecca always finds March a little bit challenging because it feels like on the calendar winter is over, and yet they've still got another month or 2 of winter because of how far north they are, almost into the Arctic Circle. So I know this is kind of that time of year where it's like, are we there yet in terms of like, you know, coming into the spring? So thinking about you, Rebecca, and parts of the East Coast and central Canada and the central Midwest in the States who are getting just pummeled with snow right now. So definitely thinking about you guys and keeping you in mind as the crocuses here are coming up and we've got daffodils blooming. Like, go figure. The other little thing that I started working on was some of this sampling. So let me share that with you. It'll just be a really quick share from last week when I was starting to prep all that Bramble Ridge yarn fiber. Bless you. Rebecca says she's determined not to let March fool her this time. Yeah, funny, hey, like, you know, try to, you know, learn from the past. You guys have lived up there for a long time now too. Like, you know, it's those rhythms of the year and those rhythms of life. I have been prepping. I think I still have the photos from last time. So let me just check here. I do. I sat and prepped these 3 braids. This is part of Megan's Advent that went out just at Christmas. It was her Advent 2025. This was one of the colorways, and this was the BFL Massim base. It's 75% BFL, 25% Massim. I've spun this base a lot over the last couple of years. It's one of my favorites. I enjoy it. It's very medium. little bit prickly. It's just a fantastic medium wool base. And I love these colors right now. I am obsessed with this particular color of green with pink. I don't know why, I just love it. And so I had this all prepped because I did it one day, not last week, but the week before, when I was starting to feel better after I had that really horrible stomach flu. And once I had it all prepped and in these little bundles here, I went through what I had brought with me from our house, because everything is in the sea can right now in storage while we reno our house and while we live at mom's. I went through what I had brought, and I thought that I had only I wasn't totally sure what I had brought for spindles, because it was sort of a last minute thing to grab my spindles and throw them in just in case, because generally coming into the spring I do tend to start turning to my spindles and pulling them out. And magically I did have one of my Turtle Made spindles. So this is one of my absolute most favorite spindles. I don't know why this particular one is such a favorite, but it is, and I always keep it close by. So I was glad when I saw that I had the foresight to grab it and to bring it. Turtle Made is made by Jen, who is located, I can't remember where in the States she is. Is it Pennsylvania? Can't remember. It's been a while since I've ordered a spindle from her, because I do have quite a lot of them. Anyways, my plan is to, originally when I was talking to Megan about this fiber, my original plan was to spin it as a very fine 2-ply. But then I was chatting with Vivian, my friend Vivian, who lives on the East Coast. I mentioned this last episode. She's What Viv Does on Instagram. We were chatting about singles and weaving with singles. And I ended up just kind of having this like aha moment where I thought maybe I could do warp and weft singles and do like quite a wide piece of fabric that would be, I didn't talk about this part on the show last week. I only mentioned about the singles, but what my kind of thought is sort of a relatively wide piece of fabric that's sort of roughly 72 to 80 inches long, so about 3 feet long, that you could actually fold in half and sort of have like as a like a bit of a stole. You could put a shawl pin in it, and then as long as there's 2 or more, but probably 4 ends in the fringe, then you could twist the fringe so that you would have so that you wouldn't have singles just left free floating in the fringe. Like I would finish off the fringe. I don't do a lot of fringe twisting. I tend to just leave it natural. I really like that. But I think with singles in the warp, I would have to twist the fringe. So I've kind of got this idea in my mind, because the singles in warp and weft would create this really lightweight, very gentle, airy fabric. And if it was a little bit wider, you could fold it for something a little bit thicker, but then you could also unfold it and have it flat, sort of as like a stole. Kind of got this idea in my mind. So that I just started. This is only one nest, little nest of fiber that I had prepped, and I've just been very slowly spindling it and sampling it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the camera to focus down here, because it wants to focus on this, which is not awesome. Here, let me flip it over. So this is what it's spinning up like so far. And what I really like about it is when you leave yarn as singles, and when you have these beautiful colors, you don't have any color twisting or any marling effect. There's no barber pulling. You just have like the clean color. And I thought in the warp and weft with the way that plain weave interlaces, I thought that would be just really pretty. It would be very gentle, very you sort of think of like a rose garden, or like it's just very, very subtle, very gentle. So it's kind of percolating in my mind. So I've got this sample going, and I'm spinning it and leaving it as singles. I'll finish it as singles. And then the other sample that I have going is on my other spindle. And this is one of my Bosworth spindles. And I'm spinning it a little bit finer with a little bit more twist, and I'm going to ply this one. So then I'll have 2 samples, and I can compare them side by side. So just very, 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 very slowly working my way through the sampling process, because if I do decide to spindle this, because I love spindle spun singles off of my Turtle Made. This is about 34 grams. It's quite a heavy spindle. I just love how the singles come off of it. It's one of my most favorite ways to spin singles. It will mean a lot of work. So it would be something that I would just work on for the rest of the year, and that would be my spindle project for the rest of the year with no pressure as to when I finish it. And it's not part of my Make 9, so it takes that pressure off of it. Oh, I'm glad you were able to get the show to play properly, Deidre. That's wonderful. Welcome, welcome. And good to see you, Deanna. Hope you're feeling a bit better. And I think that's kind of it for like the little things that I'm working on in the background, you know, scanning a bit of yarn, just kind of, you know, making my way through. So let's move on to talking about these larger projects. So one of the themes that kept coming up for me over the last month or so has been these larger projects, because I've got 2 big sweaters going, one of which I ripped and completely reknit, which you guys probably remember. I knit the terrazzo pullover and then I ripped the whole thing out. For right or wrong, I still don't know if that was the right decision, but it's done. And I've got the August cardigan behind me that we'll talk about in a little bit. And then I also had this really big spin with the Delightful Advent from MellyKnits for 2025 that she had offered to. She's like, you know, do you want to spin it and do the sampling, which I was really excited about at the time. And it's a fantastic Advent. It was really, really neat to see the interaction of all the fibers, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I think sometimes these larger projects, they definitely have a way of shifting from being really super nourishing to being heavy. And I thought we could spend some time today talking about how we are able to stay in relationship with these longer projects without letting them harden into something that feels like obligation. So I've been thinking about this a lot over the last couple of weeks because it's definitely been weighing on my mind. And I think sometimes when we get a bit bogged down with things, with projects, I know for me, sometimes it's really hard for me to put my finger on why that's the case, or what it actually feels like. You know, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, that project, I'm working on it. And then I sometimes have a difficult time like actually, you know, putting my finger on what that bogged down actually feels like. So one of the things that I was thinking about over this last week, and particularly with the cardigan and behind me, and we'll get to the Advent in just a moment. When I first come to a project and I first start a project, there's like that initial excitement, right? And it's the excitement of something new and the excitement of something, learning something new maybe. And then slowly over the course of these larger projects, it can sometimes shift to that feeling of obligation that you have to work on it, that you want to get it finished, or maybe, and this is what's happened with the August cardigan, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a little bit. There's that feeling of that obligation that you should be able to get this thing done, and yet it's still not done. And the way it manifests usually for me is that I start to pick it up less often. I let the singles languish for longer. I don't start the plying process. I maybe start looking at another project that I was working on and sort of pivot to that for a little bit. And I often, and this was really hard for me to put my finger on it, and it came to me this past weekend, this feeling, I often feel resistance. So I'll like start to think, oh, I should bring my knitting with me. I'm going to be waiting at the gym for the kids. They've got their workout. I should bring my knitting. And then, but before I even like pull it out of the bag, I just don't want to. Like, I just don't want to work on it. And that's usually a cardinal sign for me that a project is starting to edge into that kind of, you know, you're trying to fit a round peg in a square hole. The other thing that sometimes happens to me is I start to lose sight of why I started it in the first place. Some of the really, really big sweater spins, this happened with the Trinnigan cardigan, the pink one that I did a couple of years ago. I started to like really question why I'd even wanted to make it in the first place. And often that's because it becomes a project about finishing something rather than exploring something, learning more, there's a technique you want to learn, or there's a fiber that you want in for the first time, or you want to go back to and explore some more, it becomes more about finishing that thing you have to finish, right? And that's usually when I start to rip things out. And as Rebecca will say, sometimes she's like, oh, you know, pulling a Rachel. Dion was saying that she's aiming to get 4 projects completed this year, and that includes her weaving. And that probably feels like less overwhelming than setting up like a big make 9 or putting together like a massive bingo sheet of things that you have to finish. I think that's really important. Deidre, you were saying about the singles. Is singles strong enough for warp, strength in numbers? This is something that we will explore as I get into that project. There's a lot of misinformation out there about weaving with singles. It's a big topic, and it's definitely something that we need to explore. I would really encourage people to remember that for thousands of years, they wove with singles, both warp and weft. And I think it's a relatively new phenomenon, this idea that you can't weave both warp and weft with singles. And we'll talk about it more in the coming months as I put together this project. I'm just catching up with chat. You guys have lots and lots to say today, which I always really appreciate. Rebecca was saying that she's definitely trying to use her hand spun and do some bigger spins this year. And I loved it, Rebecca, when you said in the last episode of the Wool Circle, you were like, I'm really needing a break right now. I really want a bigger spin. It's like, it's so like counterintuitive, but sometimes when we approach some of this stuff from that perspective of like exploration and just delving into something larger and really getting into the process and that meditative feeling, it can be so nourishing. It can really fill us up. So let's talk first about spinning so that I can share with you guys all about the Delightful Advent, because it was fun to do. Thank you, Dion. She says, I love the contrast of your dark clothing with your hair. Oh, thank you. It makes your hair color pop. Thank you. It's funny because the other day, a friend of mine who's a hairdresser, and she's a colorist, that's her specialty. So she cuts hair and does all of that, but her specialty is color. And she came up to me. She's very blunt. She's like, your hair's really faded. I was like, oh, thanks. I suspect it has to do with last year and radiation and the cancer and everything, but I definitely have noticed that my hair has lightened. So that's very kind, Dion. Thank you so much. I don't take it personally. Hair is hair, whatever. But yeah, it was one of those like, oh, you're very blunt. So delightful. I think I have some photos to share with you guys while we chat about this, because I wanted to talk about these large projects. This spin, this was really a big undertaking. I haven't had a chance to chat with Melissa about this, so I'm hoping that she'll come and watch this segment when she has a moment, because I know she's super busy with Fibers West prep right now. But I'll just go through them really quickly before we get into kind of the nuances and some of the things that I wanted to say about some of these bigger spinning projects. Because even though this is 6 different yarns and it's only 20 grams of fiber-ish in each one, it's a lot of spinning. It's not nothing, and I think that's really important to acknowledge. So right here down below me, this kind of grayish brown one, it's funny actually, because out of all of these, there's a couple that are my absolute most favorites, and this one here is one of them. This was day 1. This was a coated Cormo from, I think it was from New York. Yes. And it was day 1 was the plain fine wool, and then day 2 is the plain fine wool blended with 20% of something. And the whole idea is to, make it kind of chonky and mix it up and make it really textured and so on and so forth. So each of these the day 2, day 4, day 6, day 8, day 10, day 12 have 20% of the add-in. So the idea is that one singles is the fine wool all by itself, and the other singles is the fine wool with 20% of something. So the Cormo was 20% bison. This one down below here is was the Corriedale, same as the Corriedale behind me, same farm. The Corriedale, and the day 2 was 20% Angora. This one is one of my favorites. I loved this yarn here. It's just this beautiful ivory color in real life. The next one, that black one, is Hanui, and from New Zealand, obviously. And it was mixed with 20% goat, Kid Nubora goat. And that's what gives it that beautiful kind of silver gray. So you've got this black Hanui, and then in it, heathered throughout it, was the 20% goat. And you can really see how far 20% goes and how much it changed that black Hanui. Because the black Hanui was this dark. It was so dark. And then look at the yarn and how silver gray it became, and how heathered. I think that one really shows the most how much that 20% affects the finished yarn. The next one, that golden, was merino. It was a merino from Oregon, from Apple Creek Merinos, and it was blended with 20% Muga silk. And of course, Muga is known for that golden color, and it really changed the merino. That one really ended up with a true marl. The single that was had the 20% Muga lightened so much that in real life you can really see how marled it really truly is. The gray one that matches very closely to the background is Jacob, and that Jacob came from as I drop everything, that Jacob came from Montana, from Daughtery Ranch, Jacobs, and Bell Ridge Farm in Montana. And it was blended with Fox. And I know I had it all mixed up last week, but it's the one that's with Fox. And that came from the Cleaver Creatures Fox Sanctuary in Oklahoma, which is really cool. This was the most interesting of all of them. This yarn was the one that was what I would call the wild card, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. And then finally, on the very, very far side there, that dark chocolate brown was a bond. It was a 23 micron bond that was from Australia, and it was blended with 20% vicuña, and that was from Golden Amber Farms in Oregon, the vicuña, so from a sort of a sanctuary farm. And that one was the most interesting in the sense that it was the most fuzzy of all of them. I don't know how else to describe it. It came out the most like with that one and the one that was with Angora, the black Hanui, those two came out with the most surface texture, if that makes sense. So when you look at them, they have the most like fuzziness. They have a little bit of halo compared to the other ones. And then the Fox was just plain chonky. It just came out like a very tweed yarn. I wouldn't say this one, the one on the far end, the Bond and the Hanui are not tweed. They're very, very much like heathered yarns, but the Jacob came out extremely tweedy. And it kind of left me thinking, if the Fox had been dyed a different color and not left natural, it would be really, really tweedy. Whereas because it's the same natural gray color as the Jacob, it came out really like, the tweed is very subtle, but it is a very tweedy yarn. These two here, the Angora and the Bison, were the least changed by their add-ins. The Angora just ended up feeling even more luxurious. So this one here, with the Corriedale and the Angora, it felt even more luxurious. It almost has like a cashmere-like quality to it, to somebody who maybe wouldn't know the difference. And this one here with the bison, it felt like a Kiviot blend or a bison blend. It has a very rustic feel to it, very soft, very light. Really, really neat. So all very unique in the way that they took their add-ins, all very unique in their color. Each of them have a very different surface texture. And each of them probably will knit up slightly differently, which is really cool. The other thing that I did, and I hope that I have a photo because I thought about including it, but whether I did or not is a different question. I did not. Shoot, darn it. Why didn't I do that? Why did I not include a photo of it? Okay, so basically what I did, I don't know if you can really see it here or in this photo here. I actually 4-plied these. So they were spinning up so fine because of these being fine wools that I actually ended up on the odd days when you're spinning the fiber all by itself. It was spinning so fine that I just decided to embrace it and go with it. And I ended up for each of these with 2 bobbins, one of the plain fiber on its own and one with the 20% add-in. And then what I did was I held the 2 singles together and I made a center pull ball. So these rested on their bobbins for a couple of weeks, and we'll talk about that in a minute as to why that happened. And I rested them on for quite a long time, and then I wound the 2 singles from each bobbin together, and I plied from a center pull ball for each of these. And actually it's probably worth it for me to just take a moment to show you the photo, because I feel like you're missing out if you don't see the photo of the center pull ball. So let me just catch up on chat here, as well as show you guys what it looked like to ply from the center pull ball, because I know we have some newer spinners in the group, and it's really fun for you guys to be able to see, like, you know, what this looks like in real life. And maybe the reason why I didn't include a photo is because I don't have a photo. Why don't I have a photo? That's weird. So this is what it looked like on the bobbins when I went to ply. So these were the bobbins post plying. So each of them was a 4-ply. Obviously, and it worked out really super well because each of these bobbins, as you can see, this was after they were rested for quite a long time. So each bobbin had an odd day, and then the other bobbin, its partner bobbin, had an even day. So you can see, like with the black canoe, how black it was on its own, and then the bobbin above is the bobbin that had the 20% goat. So I just held the 2 singles together and wound that center pull ball with them all together. And I guess what ended up happening was I took a photo like in the moment, and then I forgot to download it to show you guys. So let me see if I have it here. I will show you quick. I think it's fun to see like what this actually looks like, and then I'll catch up on chat as well at the same time, because you know, we're not in any massive rush, and it's fun to share with you guys what these look like. Okay, here we go. So let me just share with you here. This is what it looked like when I was plying from the center pull ball. So this is what it ended up looking like. So what I ended up doing was, because I had the 4 singles all together, 2 of them were coming from the inside of the center pull ball and 2 of them were coming from the outside of the center pull ball. And even though they had been resting on the bobbins for quite a long time, it was really important to keep the inside of the center pull ball from collapsing in on itself, so that I didn't end up with these massive tangles. Even though the singles were not active anymore and had been resting for a long time, you've got 2 coming from the inside and 2 coming from the outside, and there's just a lot of opportunity there for things to get really super tangled. So I put them in a glass jar. I actually used an Adams peanut butter jar, because we love Adam's peanut butter and we eat it all the time. And so we have tons and tons of their jars. And then I stuck a pencil in the middle after I had wound the ball to keep the inside from collapsing, because I was finding that to keep my thumb in the middle and do it by hand with the 4 singles, it was just too much going on hands all at once. And I was watching the twist angle because I wanted a really tight twist angle. Like, it was just a lot going on. So I was pulling from the jar that way, and it worked really, really well. I had no issues with any of the 6 skeins of yarn, and I did that from start to finish. So I hope that that helps to just kind of visualize like what this looked like in real life, and how that ended up working. Yeah, it is an incredible spread of skeins, Rebecca. You're absolutely right. And they are all 4-ply. So all 6 yarns are 4-ply. I almost didn't 4-ply the bond. It was the last one and I was getting a bit fatigued with just the whole thing. But I'm glad that I did, because now they're all the same. Yes, Christine says with the dark clothes, this is actually like a dark forest green, but I know it looks black on the screen. The decor of the room, the cardigan plus the skeins, this is all very neutral and very calming. Yes. Yes, Rebecca, she has an Apple Creek merino fleece. She can't wait to get into that one. I'm sure they're very, very, very similar. Just beautiful, beautiful fiber, beautiful yarn. So an Advent spin like this, you know, it's a large cumulative project. Rebecca says 2 center pull balls at once. No, I made 1 center pull ball. Just for anybody who's watching this back later and saw her question, I did 1 center pull ball, but 2 singles being wound at the same time. Yeah, the pencil, Pauline, works really, really well because this center kind of unravels around the pencil. It works really super well, and it keeps everything from collapsing in on itself, especially when you've got really calm, rested singles. It doesn't work when everything's really super active. I wouldn't have been able to wind the 2 singles at once. I would have had to do 2 center pull balls, but I didn't. Rebecca has a great question here before we get into talking about some of these larger cumulative projects. She was wondering how the vicuña and the fox compared to the Kiviot and the bison. So the vicuña was more textured than I thought that it would be, even more so than the bison or in the past having spun Kiviot with merino. Very, very similar, what's that right word? Very similar attributes in spinning to the bison. The vicuña created a lot of texture, and the fox was really chonky, and it didn't want to like work its way into the wool. So it sort of almost was like sitting proud of the singles, and I had to really like, squish it and make sure that there was enough twist in the singles to capture the fox fibers, because otherwise in the finished yarn it would have been sitting proud of the yarn, and that's what gave it that tweedy texture. So if the fine wool or the fox, one of them, had been dyed, you would have really been able to see it's this this skein on the other side in between the 2 dark ones, that gray one there in the middle. You would have really been able to see how the fox sat very separate. It reminded me a lot of spinning a really poorly blended cotton where just the wool won't take it, or possum, wallaby, anything that kind of wants to sit separately. The fox was really, really similar to that, and that was definitely the chunkiest of all of them. It was the most textured. I wouldn't say it was difficult to spin. It was just the most textured, and you had to just allow those tweedy bits to go through. The fox was very downy, not coarse, just downy. There were some like little, they're not kemp, but little hairs in it. It made me think a lot of Shangora or dog hair. That's what it made me think of, but downier and shorter. That's what it made me think of. Yeah, a Farrell jumper, Colleen, or a Farrell, like a colorwork toque, I thought would be really great with these colors. So one of the things that I find challenging with spins like this, that they get to be, you know, even though you're only spinning 6 yarns and you don't have a massive amount of each fiber, it's enough that it starts to become a bit repetitive. So there's that initial novelty when you're initially starting to spin, and as you work your way through all of the different days, there's that novelty with each day of like, ooh, I wonder what this is going to do. And I have to admit, when I got to the Jacob and the Fox, I was like, ooh, shiny new thing. But there's also that pressure to keep up with it daily, and there's that, and sort of that mental load of now storing all of it and trying to figure out what it's going to become. And spins like this as well, especially when it's an Advent and you're doing it in, you know, day by day with the group, there is sort of that sensation of like that delayed gratification. And you know how they've studied kids and they put the candy in front of the kid and they say, if you don't eat the candy, you can have 2. But you can't have it until the end of the play session. And most kids will have the candy, and they can't sort of put together in their mind that if they wait, that they'll now have 2 candies instead of 1. And they see it over and over again, that kids that are like really super intrinsically motivated tend to wait for the candy, and the kids that are more externally motivated tend to get the candy right away. And there's all sorts of like behavioral studies that have been done as offshoots with all of this stuff. But what I find really interesting about spins like this is because you're kind of waiting for the end, it can get a bit repetitive, and it can sort of start to feel like a bit like you get a bit bogged down. And if I were to have done all of this on my supported spindles and tried to keep up day by day, I think I would have started to really get quite bogged down with this. As it was, I was spinning on my wheels. I was prepping each day and stripping down the fiber and making little nests and pre-drafting it. And so there's all of that prep work that goes into it as well. And I think what I started to realize as I was making my way through it, especially after I got done the first 4 days, and I started to make my way into what I would call the middle of the spin, where you're getting into like day 5, 6, 7, where you're getting close to the halfway point, but you're not quite there yet toward the end, is it's really easy. It was getting really easy to fall into, I just have to finish this. I just have to finish this. And because I got sick in the middle of it, and I really kind of had this kind of down, I sort of had to down regulate because I was dealing with something was going on with my pelvis, which seems to be resolved now, but I was having some issues with my piriformis. I was sick. We had a lot going on in terms of like scheduling stuff, because we're starting to wind down now because winter soccer is finishing up. And so now we've got a couple of lighter weeks, which is much needed. And then we go into spring break, which is also much needed. I sort of realized that I had to take that time in that space to really step back and just enjoy it, because once it's over, right? And if you don't savor it and take the learning, like what is the fox going to do to the Jacob? What is the vicuña going to do that would be different from how maybe alpaca or llama would have acted, because it's that much finer with the bond. I realized that I was going to miss the forest for the trees. And so that was really good to sort of remember and just take a step back. And what I ended up doing was taking a whole day to just dive into this Advent and just really savor it for what it was, knowing that when it was over, it was over. And then, you know, one of the other things that I started to think about was, how can a project like this really feed my soul versus just working on something to get it accomplished, so that I can sit here and say, I finished this thing, it's great, I learned a lot, and move on to the next thing. You know, spins like this, where there's so much variety and there's nuance, and you're playing with fibers that we don't routinely play with every day, maybe with the exception of the silk, maybe, and let's be honest, silk makes everything better. I really sort of, when I started to get to the end of it, I was like feeling, you know, that sort of morning of like, oh, now it's done. And really wanting to savor those last few yarns that I was plying and just really enjoy them. Watch that twist angle tighten up as the twist goes in. Watch how the fox made the yarn a bit more tweedy, and making sure that it was all locked in so that it wouldn't be sitting proud and sitting separately, that I was getting enough twist in there and into that 4-ply to make sure that I had a really nice cohesive yarn after, just as an example. And you know, sometimes when we finish spins like this, when we get to the end of a spin, and sweaters are like this as well, sometimes completion doesn't always bring relief, right? Like I was thinking on the weekend, because I was ripping back the sweater, which we'll talk about in a minute. Sometimes it means more decisions, and that fatigue that we sometimes experience with making a lot of decisions in a project means that like we're left with like, you know, what to work on next. How are we going to use the yarn? If I have to rip back and start again, how does that feel? And it just kind of goes on and on and on. So while I was really happy to have this done and have the samples done and have the yarns done so that I can share it with Melissa now that she's back from her trip, I was also left with that kind of feeling that we sometimes get at the end of a project where you're sort of feeling like, you know, that little bit of the letdown. And I think sometimes when these projects, if this were to go on for much longer, I think at some point there probably would have been a point where I stopped feeling really curious, where I started to sort of feel like it was something that I like had to get finished, or that I was responsible for in some way, shape, or form, that I wasn't able to just enjoy it for what it was and savor it for what it is. Now it's like, I've got another one to do, and I've got another one to do, and I've got to finish it. So like 12 days was kind of about right, where you're sort of, you're coming to the end and you're like, yeah, this was fun. Like this was good. You're just getting to that point where it's like, you know, starting to become a little bit of a job, if that makes sense. Catching up. None of these had guard hairs. They more just, the fox had some hairs, but they were more like what we would have, like think of like dog hair or like human hair. And the other thing, Rebecca has a really good point. She says she wonders if it depends on the fox, that she's had kiviat that's clumped before, but now she's better at choosing it and processing it. I think it really depends on the wool. I used to think that it really had a lot to do with the add-in. I think it has more to do with the wool, to be honest. I think it has to do with that spongy porosity, those factors that we've talked about quite a lot in the community about these fibers being able to blend with these certain wools. And some of them seem to be able to suck up these fibers better than others. And it's that, you know, that je ne sais quoi that we all have such a difficult time putting our finger on in terms of what's really going on. Because honestly, I think like a CVM would have sucked up that fox. The Jacob was pretty spongy. It's pretty, I've got it right here. This is really spongy. This has that feeling of holes and that feeling of that it would suck up something like fox or wallaby or Shangora or you know, any of these fibers. Cotton would go into this really well. It just has that spongy quality, and yet that fox still sort of wanted to stick to itself and almost create like tweety bits. So I definitely think the fibers, the fact that these are all really fine, really crimpy, they all have that porosity factor that we've talked about a lot in the community, and they all took these fibers really quite well. The one that was the silkiest and the smoothest was actually the merino, and I wasn't surprised when I saw that Melissa had put it with silk, because that's what this screams to me, is silk. It just feels silky. It was the least spongy of all of them. It was the smoothest and the finest. Yeah, so fun. We could talk about that until the cows come home. So maybe that's a conversation for another day. Let's talk about knitting. Knitting, yes. Let's talk about knitting. Okay, so knitting has been very interesting the last couple of weeks because I kind of hit a wall on Friday. And I'll explain what I mean by that in just a moment. Because because it's not really something that I've talked about on the show particularly. And some of you who have been through, I'm just going to shift the camera over just a little bit so you can really see Diana here. One of the things that I've really experienced, and some of you who've been through major treatment protocols, deal with autoimmune, you know, chronic disease, all that kind of stuff, can possibly relate. Since the spring, and since my going through my treatment in April, and then I had May was really like a very quiet month, very low in terms of like what we had on our calendar. We really tried to keep it really quiet. We did go up to Kelowna for one weekend for soccer, but like I just rested a ton. Anyways, since then, I sort of seem to have every like 3 or 4 months, I sort of have these kind of events happen, if you will, where I just kind of get to the Friday and I just crash. And it's every 2 or 3 months, every 3 or 4 months. It's not super often, but it's like I just run out of steam. And I had one of those last week. So on Friday, I just kind of hit a wall. And this sweater was basically done. And I had finished the sleeves. So both sleeves are done. And I had started working on the button band, which I think I had talked about last show. And this is the August cardigan by Joanna Gee. How do you say her last name? Grisht? I'm not totally sure. And this is my Anna Grafton Corriedale from New Zealand. And this was washed, prepped, and spun last summer. And I have about just shy of 1,000 yards. And so what I did was I worked my way through the cardigan as much as I could. And I followed the pattern till here. And then I did the ribbing, which is called for in the pattern, and I had already finished the sleeves, but I sort of realized as I got to the end of the ribbing, and I didn't do the tubular bind off. I stopped before the tubular bind off. I kind of realized that the length of the cardigan, that if I had yarn left over, I would like to lengthen the cardigan. So I had already sort of done the button band, which is here, and I had sort of already started to add that. So I put it on holders and I ripped back the ribbing and I started to lengthen the cardigan because I actually still have quite a bit of yarn left. I have more than enough to lengthen and add 2 more crosses of the cable and then the ribbing. So all of this wrapped around here, all of that was all of the ribbing. And I've already added 1 cable cross. And I haven't even knit through all of that yarn yet. So I weighed it. I weighed that yarn, this stuff, so that I know how far I can go before I need to start the ribbing of what's left here. So like I've still got quite a bit of yarn. So I'm just gonna keep knitting until I run out of yarn. Obviously not like completely run out, but you know, to the point where I can add more length. This is the point where with this cardigan, I have completely lost the plot. So because I kind of crashed on Friday and I spent a lot of the weekend just quiet, recovering, just sort of having this like, you know, recovery mode, if you will. I really started to put a bunch of pressure on myself without even realizing it. I didn't even know that I was doing it. Big project, live stream right now, and I started to really put a lot of pressure on myself to get this finished. I wanted to have the button band done, I wanted to have it all cast off, and I wanted to have like a finished project ready to talk to you guys about. And I sort of started to think about on the weekend, while I was reflecting on all of this and thinking about my Advent spin, thinking about this project, thinking about the Tratso pullover that I pulled out and started over, and just kind of all these projects that, you know, sort of have this sort of theme to them. I started to realize that all these little decisions, you know, deciding not to put the button band on initially when I cast on and adding it afterwards, doing the sleeves first and then going back and finishing the body, ripping back, re-knitting, all of those decisions create, like, they accumulate, and they might seem really small in the moment, but I've really realized that they really start to affect sort of that fatigue, that project fatigue. And then because you're making all these little decisions along the way, it starts to go on for longer, right? So and we do often underestimate how long something is going to take us. We've got this stash full of fiber, and we think, oh yeah, I can get that spun up, or I can get that knit up in a year, and like 5 years later you've still got it. So I think we do tend to underestimate how long something will live with us and how long it's going to take us. The other thing is, that I should be able to have this finished. I should be able to knit a sweater in X amount of time. I should, I am a sweater knitter, therefore, right? And it's this identity pressure that we put on ourselves, and I've really started to try to let go of some of that. I used to think of myself as like a capital S, capital K sweater knitter, capital K knitter, capital S spinner. And I've really started to try to let go of some of that. And then there's the cost. A lot of it has to do with our time costs, how much the materials cost, our tools and how much they cost. So there's that bias that we sort of start to factor in. And then the season shifting, this is, it's a heavy 3-ply winter cardigan. I want to have it done while the weather's still cool and I can wear it. And so I've really started to try to catch myself when I do that and change what I call it. So this is my ongoing sweater project. And actually my vintage cardigan that I haven't talked about for a little bit now, it's because it's on hold, it's on timeout. I've really started to try to think of that as my ongoing vintage cardigan. And it just takes that identity out of it, that it was supposed to be done. No, it's just in process. And so, like, as makers, it's really easy to get bogged down, right? It's really important, that even if we need to avoid a project or we need to put it away for a while, that we don't feel guilty about it. So it's like the vintage cardigan. Maybe this needs to go away for a couple weeks and have a little bit of a break and have a little bit of a timeout, and then I pull it out with fresh eyes. Because it makes us feel like, our discipline is in question, and that, doubting our taste, feeling less creative overall. We start chasing novelty so that we can, what's that word? Starting something new, sampling something new, trying something new, just so that we can feel that lightness again, just so that we can feel like our making is fun and it's playful. And I think that's all of those things combined can really color how we feel about our making. And that was what kept coming up for me again and again on the weekend as I was sort of going through this whole kind of almost physical recovery, along with recognizing that, like, this stuff feels heavy right now and these projects feel heavy, and what do I want to do about that? So this one in particular, I've just been really trying to be kind to myself about it, and like, it's okay. I started to think yesterday, Nora had curling lessons yesterday through school, and I was one of the parent drivers, and I really started to think about, that I wanted the button band wider, and maybe I should take the button band off, and maybe I should redo it and rip it back. And I just thought, if I do decide that that's the case, hang on. If I do decide that I want to do that, and if I do decide that I want to go through that's okay, and that just means that it continues to be an ongoing project. I don't know if any of that makes sense. I would love to hear what you guys think. You guys have some great questions in chat about the fox. Colleen was asking how short the fox was. It was really, there was quite a variety. It was very, very short in places, and then other places was more like a hair, and it was a little bit longer. But it really added a lot of, I'm going to use one of Melissa's phrases. It added chonk. There's no other way to describe it. And it was fun. The fox was really fun. It doesn't have any kind of a smell. It just smells like eucalyptus. I use lavender eucalyptus. That's what that's what it smells like. It doesn't have any weird smell or anything, Amanda. That's a really good question. Yeah, so that's the August color cardigan. I'll just share with you guys a little bit really quickly. It's knit from the top down. It's a raglan. So this cable here is actually the raglan, which is really it's really lovely. And you can see it here in the back as well. And then you build out the sweater, the sleeve as you go. I did lengthen the sleeves by about 3 inches. They were just a little bit too short for me. My row gauge is a little bit off. And when I knit the swatch, it really bloomed after washing. It really, like after I washed it and everything, even though it's quite dense, post-washing compared to what it was like pre-washing, it really like bloomed and grew. Even though it still feels quite dense, that round 3-ply, so pretty. Love this yarn. So I was really proud of this yarn when I finished it. I loved it so much. And then you can see that the cables work their way down at the back. Very simple, you know, enough texture to be interesting, but not so much that it's overwhelming. And then I added the button band after the fact to give it a little bit more structure. Like I said, I kind of wished I'd made it a bit wider. So that might be something that I address in the next day or so. But I'm going to finish off the body of the cardigan first, and then I'll go from there. It may be one of those things that I just have to let it go. And yeah, this will grow quite a bit post blocking. It's so fine. And then you've got the ribbon here too. It's gonna grow. James keeps calling. Let me deal with him just really quickly. He doesn't know about the live stream, and he is going to keep calling and keep calling and keep calling. I'm going to have to talk to him about that later. So that is the August colorway, or the cardigan. Colleen says it's so lovely. Thank you so much, Colleen. And then the other cardigan that's really come together in the last week or so, because I was working on it when I started to feel really bogged down with the August cardigan, I actually pulled out my Seasons cardigan. And I'm really enjoying how this is coming out because it's ended up having a lot of positive ease. And it's got just this like lovely bounce to it because of the half fisherman's rib. And I haven't done anything about like the button band or the sleeves. I've got one of the sleeves is just started. Let me just turn this so you guys can see. And this is gonna grow with washing. My swatch grew a ton. I really like how this is coming. Dion was saying I was feeling myself pushed to get a sweater done by the end of February, and in the end I frogged it, and I'm not sad about it. Yes, giving yourself permission, right, to let go of some of this stuff. Absolutely. Rebecca was saying a good button band can be so make or break, right? Though it might go faster and be less annoying if you knit it separately and sew it on. Well, that's exactly it. Like that button band is separate. It's seamed on, but I just have to pull it out and take it back. So exactly. They're not that time consuming to make. You're absolutely correct. And I just need to remember that. Pauline was saying the language and the words that we use influence our mindset so much, and I think we often forget how we speak to ourselves. And I know a friend of mine, and I've read this before, but she said it to me recently, and she's so right. She was like, you know, if we talked to our friends the way we sometimes talk to ourselves, we just wouldn't talk to them that way. And she's so right. And I think sometimes we're almost our own worst enemy. So this project I've ended up feeling really good about. And I think one of the things was when I ripped back the terrazzo pullover, because I just sort of realized that I wasn't getting the look that I wanted at the bottom of the pullover. I wasn't sure I was going to wear it. This was more what I had in mind, the half fisherman's rib all over versus just the turtleneck, the collar and the hem. really started to think about this in different terms. And I think that like sometimes it's that in this case the project did change, but sometimes the project doesn't need to change. And I think that's the case with the August cardigan. Oftentimes it's the relationship that needs to change. And so with this, I came at it with like a totally different mindset the second time round. And I came with it, you know, that I had this vision of what I wanted. And so I, you know, did a Rachel, like Rebecca always says, and I ripped it back and started again. But I also did a couple of small things in between. So I did a couple of the Advent spins, like the Cormo, and I also did the Corriedale, and so I got those done in between, and then I started knitting on my seasons, and then and so I had some things that were playful in between that were fun, and then I started to reframe this as it'll get done when it's done, because it's got lots of positive ease. It's not tight. It'll be a great shoulder season cardigan, so I can use it in the fall. I can use it in the spring. It would be great in the summer when the air conditioning's running full hog. So productivity stopped being the goal, and instead I just started focusing on like working on it, you know, restoring that momentum for the project that I initially was like really excited about. Back when I initially told you guys about this and I had finished my Spin December yarn, I was so excited about it. And pushing through to finish the pullover really did nothing to help that whole project in general, but I learned a lot. And so then when I ripped it back, I knew exactly what I wanted to create. So sometimes you just need a different experience, and sometimes we just need to like rethink things. So yeah, makes me want to knit it more. I love the bounce. Yes. No, I wasn't. No, Rebecca, I wasn't knitting on it as I went. I did it separate because I wanted that structure of the button band. That's actually really good to point that out, because yeah, I wasn't explicit about that. Yeah, this turned, the fabric of this is so nice. And actually, if you look at the back, it's even better. You know how with the terrazzo, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was like that little bit of subtle striping in there because I had the different yarns that I applied with different things. And I talked a lot about my Spin December back in December and January. So definitely go back and watch those episodes. But because of the way that the half fisherman's rib works, because you're slipping every other stitch, every other row, you don't end up with that overt striping. So it looks more like a watercolor. It kind of reminds me of like a Monet painting. And you end up sort of these like really beautiful kind of color shifts throughout, rather than overt striping like you do with just plain stockinette. And this is more what I was had in mind after seeing that woman at the production in Vancouver that I told you guys about in early January. I think it was the first episode in January, sitting behind us at the show wearing this all over fisherman rib turtleneck sweater. And I loved it so much. It looks so good on her. This was more what I had in mind. So really, really fun. I am still alternating skeins. Thank you, Rebecca. You're keeping me on track today. Thank you so much. I am still alternating skeins. So each row is there and back in one skein, and then there and back in another skein, there and back in the other skein. So just alternating 2 skeins. With the stockinette, I had to do 3 skeins because otherwise there was too much striping. Whereas with this one, I only did 2 at a time. So I took just the 2. Yeah, I did, didn't I? I'm hoping the sleeves work out too. So fingers crossed for the sleeves. We'll see. So just before we get into community participation, I thought we could just kind of sum up this discussion. You know, to remind, this is sort of more like reminding myself that getting bogged down with stuff is not a failure of discipline. Like, it's not like there's something wrong with us, or that we aren't good makers, or that we're not, that our integrity somehow as a person is in question. I often say that to my new spinners when I have them in workshops and stuff, like your ability to make yarn does not reflect you as a person. There is a learning curve. And I sort of have started to really view it as like collecting information, and these larger projects do often need endurance, and it requires flexibility, and being a long-term maker often means learning when to persist and when to let go, and when to allow room for the process. And I think sometimes, like, you know, I get really bogged down in like fiber prep sometimes, and that's because sometimes it really is quite onerous. It really is a lot of work, and it's okay. And sometimes it just requires us recognizing that and being flexible and being able to pivot sometimes and work on other things to lighten our load a little bit, but also to reflect on what sometimes just needs to give. Like sometimes you really do just have to abandon the project and move on. So I just wanted to leave you with some of those thoughts for those of you who are you know, still at the beginning of your journey and learning to give yourself permission when things aren't maybe going the way you thought that it would. And I hope that that's helpful. Oh, right. Let's do community participation. It's been a while since we've been able to do community participation, so I'm pleased to be able to fit it in today. So let's do that next. So I am not sure. Oh shoot, where did it go? Oh, it came up when I was doing our there we go. That'll do it. Sometimes it almost seems to like time out a little bit. Like I have it all ready to go before the show, and then all of a sudden like nothing's working. It's funny how that happens. Like it seems to be a little tiny bit finicky sometimes. I cannot believe how much you guys have had finished over the last like couple of like week. All of a sudden the Slack channel is like blown up with stuff, and this is from last week because we didn't get to community participation. So now in 2 weeks we're gonna have even more. So wow, you guys, wow. Florence has been working on a whole bunch of using up her stash, and it's sort of this 52 weeks of using what she has, which I think is so much fun. So she shared a bunch of stuff in the Ravelry group recently. She finished a project for her brother-in-law. She helped her brother-in-law sort her sister's stash after her death. I'm so sorry, Florence, for your loss. And then she made this cable jersey for her husband, Alan. And then she took that same project and she made one for Raphael, her 6-year-old grandson, which I thought was really cool. I'm pretty sure it's a grandson. And this was using up yarn that's probably been in the stash for 12 years, which was amazing. And you can see the similarities of the two cable patterns. And how fun in, you know, two different yarns, two different sweaters, different neck. This one's a crew neck and this one's the V-neck, but wow, so effective. Well done, Florence. And then of course we have our general makes and shares and whatnot. Christine, you're hilarious. She says, learning curve. I prefer to think of it as spinning roller coaster as we go up and down and up and down. Isn't that true? That's so true for like just creative people in general, right? Like there's just always something. This is from Erin. I thought, Erin, this is just beautiful yarn. Most recent spin, she had 2 bats of MellyKnits. Both were CVM cotton sari silk. One was a pale purple and one was a pale green, and she decided to ply them together. So this is the same bat that I used for my CVM cotton sari silk. It was that, what was it called? The Kutar, I think it was called the Kutar tee. I spun 2 bats and very similar, came up with, you know, 2 big skeins of yarn, just like Erin's been able to make here. And I knit that short-sleeved summer tank. summer t-shirt from Sorry Nordland, and I had roughly 700 yards as well. I didn't do a 4-ply, I did a 3-ply, but oh my goodness, I love this yarn. And I can see Erin's had the same results. It's just, oh, gorgeous. So she's thinking about the outline tee. I think that's a pattern by Petite Knits, I think. I might be wrong. This is from Megan. This is for a wall hanging. It's a big tapestry. The black is hand spun, processed by me from fleece. It was Icelandic from her friend's sheep called Black Pearl. And then there are all sorts of different wools in there, including some Plutolopi. I knit it in the round and then she steeked it. She can't wait to get it on the wall. I really hope, Megan, that you share a photo of this hanging. It's just beautiful. Really effective. Love this teal in here. Isn't that pretty? This gives that pop. From Christina, the Florence bag by Petite Knits. Isn't this beautiful? The lining here, I love this. Made a few mistakes, which was frustrating and slowed her down, but although the pattern itself is very easy, she used her hand spun, hand-dyed linen, and 3 strands held together per the pattern. Turned out exactly as I'd hoped. I love how this sits. With the zipper and whatnot. I just think that's fantastic. Really well done, Christina. Beautiful. This is some sweater spins that you guys have been working on. This is from Ellie Ann. I love this so much. She's considering an I-cord lining around the armholes here, which would be really, I think she was hoping that maybe it would finish it off. And it fits her. She likes the vest. Pattern is the Edgar slipover. It was a better choice for me than the last one, which was the Weekend slipover by Petite Knit. So she went back and chose this pattern instead. So pretty. Also from Megan, another finished project. She wanted to add sleeves to this sweater. So she spun up another 200 grams, which is down here from John Arbin. It's a 3-ply bulky woolen spun, which is well out of her comfort zone since her default is 2-ply fingering. But she's really super happy with it, and there will probably be a line on the sleeves, but she decided she would wear it more with sleeves in her cold house. Love this. Beautiful, Megan. I think, you know, when you know yourself and you know what you will and won't wear, you kind of have to go with it. It's kind of like my August cardigan, right? Like I know I'll wear it more if it's a little bit longer. So ergo, you got to lengthen it. Isn't this beautiful? This is from Robin. It's her Ooey Gooey by Andrea Mowry. The beige is her Hanui alpaca silk in the color Fudge. And then the color work is a Polwar silk gradient that she spun up. It's all 2-ply, about 12 wraps per inch, and it turned out exactly as she had envisioned when she started spinning. It is gorgeous, Robin, and these colors on you right next to your face is going to be so pretty. I love this. Really well done. Robin is such a prolific maker. We have a lot of people in our community that are prolific makers. I'm just always amazed at what you guys make. This is from Sue. It's always a tricky question for spinners. What do we do with all those single skeins of hand spun? So she's collected hers into like groups in terms of yarn weight and texture. This is the first cardigan to be made in this way. The inspiration was the fabulous Florida orange colorway from Hilltop Cloud, and the trickiest part was the double knit pockets. Or more to the point, the top edging to set up the double knit pockets. An enjoyable knit and a useful cardigan. This is so fun, Sue. I can totally see you wearing this. I think it's just so much fun. Love this brown with the flexi yellow in there, and then the tealy blue with the flexi yellow. I think those are such pretty yarns. Really fun idea. This is from Suzanne, and really exciting to be able to celebrate her in this sweater. She finished her Metamorphic from Andrea Mowry last weekend. She used a combo plied yarn as her contrast color and a commercial yarn, wool stock worsted, for her main color. So that's this gorgeous green was the main color, and then this was the spin. The pattern is great for using colorful handspun from braids if you want to tone the handspun down a bit. You're absolutely right. And the photos show some of her process. So these are some of the photos, but there's more on the Slack channel. And I love that she took these yarns and she plied them together to create this gorgeous color play in the sweater itself. It's so pretty. This is where striping looks amazing when you do stuff like this. And she'll wear it more because it's so neutral. It's beautiful. And spindle spinning, we've kind of seen an uptick again in spindle spinning. There are people in our community that only spindle spin. So if you're a spindler out there or you're looking for help and support, go to #spindles on Slack. There are some incredible spindlers and they're always posting and they're always really, really generous and helpful and want to help people. So yeah, if you're looking for spindle people and like-minded spindlers, that is the place to find them. This is from Christine, a new sweater spin on her support spindles. She bought 4 packs of a mixed color Corriedale from Wool of Wool, and she was going to spin it as a marled yarn, but then she decided to put it on her drum carder, and she wasn't happy with the way that it was blending, so she brought out her blending board, and she's making row legs, and she's much happier with the results. It'll be a 3-ply, and she's planning to knit it into a cardigan. Beautiful, Christine. Her spinning is always just gorgeous. Really lovely, Christine. Thank you guys for sharing and for doing everything that you do and for being here and for being a part of the community. I really appreciate it as always. And we are richer for you being here. So thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my toes for participating and for joining in the conversation and for just being here. It's always a pleasure. If you are looking for more and you're not sure where to begin, be sure to jump down into the show notes and have a look at the Start Here guide. That's the best place to start if you're wondering where to jump in. And to those who have been here all along or have been here for a while, thank you so much for your ongoing support of the show. It really does help us to keep the lights on. It helps me to support Rebecca and Dion to do what they do. It's just really an incredible community, and it's a way to keep things moving forward. The last installment, if you will, or the last module of Breaking a Braid was released this month. So for those who are in the Silk Circle, be sure to go and watch that. If you've been waiting for them all to be released so that you can watch them all consecutively back to back to back, they are now available. And you can find them in the collection on Patreon under Breaking a Braid. Just make sure that you're signed in so that you can watch them if you're part of the Silk Circle or higher. So thank you so much, you guys. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I feel like the show today went like this. It went so fast, but it's just wonderful to be here with you guys. And 2 shows in 2 weeks is always a little bit of a marathon, and it's such a pleasure to be able to do this and to be here with you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Rebecca will be back here next week, same time, same place with all of you to do the Wool Circle, and I look forward to seeing you guys then. Happy spinning, happy knitting, happy making, and stay warm. Bye, everyone.